Welcome to this deep dive. We're going to be talking all about Bitcoin today.
Yeah.
You send us in the Bitcoin Standard by Saifedean Ammous, and we're going to be exploring this idea of Bitcoin as like an alternative to the whole banking system.
Mm-hmm.
What are the arguments, and could this actually like work, you know?
This book dives deep into that.
Yeah.
It doesn't just explain Bitcoin,
Okay. Right.
It really argues that it's kind of a return to sound money principles, which we've kind of lost with the way money works today.
That's so interesting. It starts with this like fascinating history of money. I mean, we've used some really strange things as currency over the years, right?
Absolutely, we have. But the fascinating thing is that the things that worked best, whether it was shells, salt, or, gold,
Yeah.
they all had a few key things in common. Scarcity, durability, divisibility, portability, and resistance to censorship.
Right.
Kind of like a well-made tool, right?
Yeah.
It has to have the right qualities to do its job.
I see. So it's not just about what it is, but what it can do. And the book really focuses on gold as that like classic example, right?
Exactly. For a long time, gold was the standard because it had all those qualities.
Right.
But then things shifted in the 20th century away from gold to what we call fiat currency, which is basically money that isn't backed by anything really tangible.
Okay, so the money we use now isn't tied to gold or anything like that. But what's so bad about that? I mean, it seems to work for the most part.
Well, the book argues that there are some, serious downsides.
Okay.
For example, because governments can print more money whenever they want.
Right.
It can lead to inflation.
Yeah.
Where your money buys less over time.
Of course.
Imagine saving up for years, only to find out your money is worth, way less.
Oh, that's a scary thought. It's like running on a treadmill,
Yeah.
putting in all this effort but not getting anywhere. And I've definitely felt like my money doesn't go as far as it used to. Is that what they mean by like resource misallocation?
That's part of it, yeah. The book argues that when governments manipulate interest rates and the money supply, it can create these kind of artificial economic booms and busts,
Right.
It's like building a house on a shaky foundation.
Yeah.
Eventually, the whole thing could come crashing down.
So those wild swings in the economy, like bubbles bursting, could be linked to this control over fiat currency. That makes you think twice about, who's really in control.
Exactly.
Is that where this lack of transparency comes in?
With fiat currency, yeah, the control is very centralized.
Right.
With governments and banks, we don't always know what's going on behind the scenes.
Right.
And the book argues that this lack of transparency makes the system, vulnerable to manipulation and less accountable to the people it's supposed to serve.
Okay, I'm starting to see why the book frames Bitcoin as this like potential solution. It's like, what if we could build a new system from the ground up that avoids these pitfalls? This is where Bitcoin enters the picture, right? But how does it actually address these issues?
That's where it gets really interesting. Remember those key properties of sound money we discussed?
Yeah.
Bitcoin is designed to embody them. In the digital age,
Okay.
let's start with scarcity, right?
Okay.
Bitcoin has a limited supply of 21 million coins that will ever exist. This built-in scarcity is written into the code. No one can just decide to create more.
Right.
This helps fight inflation because the supply can't be manipulated.
It's like finding a rare gem, There's only a limited amount, so it holds its value.
Yeah.
And it's all like coded in, which is kind of blows my mind. But what about the other problems, like the manipulation and lack of transparency?
That's where decentralization comes in.
Okay.
No single person or entity controls Bitcoin. It operates on a distributed network, kind of like the internet itself.
Oh, okay.
And all transactions are recorded on a public blockchain. It's a transparent ledger that anyone can see.
So more accountability and less opportunity for like shady dealings. So it's like taking the power away from the few and giving it to the many. But that raises a question for me. If anyone can see everything on the blockchain, doesn't that make it less secure?
It's a great question. And it seems counterintuitive. But the book argues that this transparency actually makes Bitcoin more secure.
Right.
Think of it like a fortress with walls made of glass.
Right.
Everyone can see what's happening. So any attempt to break in is immediately visible. It's this open and verifiable nature that builds trust in the system.
Okay, that makes sense. Like security through transparency. I never thought about it that way. But let's be real. A lot of people are wary of putting their money into something they don't fully understand.
Oh, that's totally understandable.
Yeah.
But what if understanding the potential benefits of Bitcoin could change the way you think about money altogether.
All right, you've got my attention. Tell me more about how this could all play out and what it could mean for, like, individuals like me.
Well, that's what we'll be digging into next.
Okay, listeners, get ready, because this deep dive is about to get even deeper. We'll be right back with part 2. Welcome back. So we've talked about some of the problems, with the way money works now and how Bitcoin might offer, like, some solutions.
Right.
But honestly, it still feels kind of abstract. What does this actually mean for people?
That's a really important question. The book argues that one of the most powerful things about Bitcoin is this idea of individual empowerment.
Okay.
It's about taking control of your own financial life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Without being at the mercy of traditional institutions.
Okay, I'm starting to see where this is going, but how does that actually work, like, in practice?
Well, think about it this way. Right now, if you want to use financial services, right?
Yeah.
You have to go through gatekeepers, banks, governments, all these institutions.
Yeah.
They control access, they set the rules.
Right.
And sometimes they even limit what you could do with your own money.
Ugh, tell me about it. Remember that time I tried to send money to my friend overseas and got slammed with those insane fees? It felt so unfair, like it's my money.
Exactly. That's the frustration that Bitcoin is trying to address.
Okay.
By decentralizing finance, you're cutting out those middlemen. You have more direct control.
Right.
And you can transact with others peer-to-peer without needing permission from anyone.
So it's like taking back ownership of your finances. I like the sound of that. But what about people who are already excluded from the traditional financial system, though? Those who don't have access to banks or reliable internet.
Yeah.
Wouldn't this just leave them further behind?
That's a really critical point, and the book doesn't shy away from those complexities.
Yeah.
Bitcoin isn't a magic bullet, right?
Yeah.
That solves every societal problem.
Of course.
For people without access to technology or financial literacy.
Yeah.
Right. The underlying issues remain.
Right. It's not like a quick fix for deep-rooted inequalities or anything.
Exactly. But even in those contexts,
yeah,
Bitcoin has the potential to open up new possibilities.
Okay.
Imagine communities with limited banking infrastructure, right? Using Bitcoin for peer-to-peer transactions or microloans. It could empower individuals in ways that were previously impossible.
So it's less about replacing the existing system and more about creating, like, alternatives, new pathways for financial inclusion. That's an interesting angle. But the book also talks about censorship resistance, which feels even more complex.
Yeah.
What's that all about?
This is where Bitcoin's potential impact becomes especially powerful, right?
Okay.
Imagine living under an oppressive regime that controls information and finances. Dissidents, journalists, anyone who speaks out, right?
Yeah.
Could have their bank accounts frozen, their funds seized. Bitcoin, with its decentralized nature, can provide a lifeline.
Wow, it's like this financial safe haven, a way to protect yourself from those kinds of threats.
Yeah.
It suddenly feels a lot more significant than just, like, buying things online.
Exactly. It's about securing basic freedoms, in a digital age.
Okay.
But if we zoom out even further, what could this mean for the whole financial system?
Right. I mean, what happens to banks if people start using Bitcoin instead?
That's the big question, right?
Yeah. Is this like the end of banks as we know them?
That's where things get really speculative, but also really exciting. The book argues that Bitcoin's disruptive potential is huge.
Okay.
As adoption grows, right?
Yeah.
It could force banks and even governments to adapt or risk becoming obsolete.
It's like when ride-sharing apps came along and shook up the whole taxi industry.
Exactly.
Those who didn't adapt got left behind.
Yeah. Whether Bitcoin will completely revolutionize things is still uncertain, right?
Yeah.
But the book makes a strong case for its potential to do so. Imagine a more competitive, innovative financial landscape where individuals have more choices and more control.
Okay, now we're getting into some serious what-if territory. So in a way, Bitcoin isn't just about money, it's about power, too. The power to control your finances, resist censorship, and potentially to reshape the entire financial system.
That's a great way to put it. And that's what makes the Bitcoin standard so compelling. It's not just about the technology, it's about fundamental questions of freedom and control and the future of our society.
It's a lot to take in. I mean, we've covered the history of money, the technical side of Bitcoin, and now these massive societal implications. But before we, dive even deeper, let's take a breath and let our listeners process all this.
Take a moment.
We'll be back with the final part of our deep dive into the Bitcoin standard. exploring the philosophical side of this whole Bitcoin phenomenon. Okay, so we're back for the final part of our deep dive into the Bitcoin standard. We've talked about the what and the how of Bitcoin, but now let's get philosophical. This is where it gets really mind-bending.
It definitely pushes you to think differently, yeah.
Yeah.
The book goes beyond just the technical aspects and, challenges us to reconsider our whole relationship with money, value, and even the role of government.
All right, let's unpack that.
Yeah.
What are the big philosophical questions this book is raising?
One of the most fundamental ideas is this idea of individual sovereignty, right?
Okay.
The book argues that because Bitcoin decentralizes that financial power, it gives individuals way more control over their own, economic lives.
Right.
It's like opting out of systems that you may not agree with.
Yeah.
Or that don't serve your best interests.
So it's like a declaration of financial independence. Hey, I'm not playing by your rules anymore.
Yeah.
I'm going to create my own system.
That's the spirit of it. It's about empowering individuals, right?
Well, yeah.
To take control of their financial lives and participate in a system that they believe is more fair, transparent, and accountable.
I can see how that would resonate with a lot of people, especially those who are feeling disillusioned with, the current financial system. But what about the role of government, though? If everyone starts using Bitcoin, does that mean, the end of government-issued money?
Yeah.
The end of taxes? Are we talking about anarchy here?
Hold on. Not so fast.
Hey.
The book isn't advocating for anarchy or the complete dismantling of government, right?
It's more about a potential rebalancing of power. Governments would still have crucial roles to play, but their control over monetary policy might be diminished.
Okay, so more of a shift in the power dynamics rather than a complete overthrow.
Yeah.
Interesting. But what about the potential downsides of this kind of individual financial freedom? Could it lead to more inequality?
Yeah.
More opportunities for scams and fraud?
Those are valid concerns. And the book doesn't pretend that a Bitcoin-based system would be perfect.
Right.
There would definitely still be challenges and risks, right?
Yeah.
But the argument is that those risks are outweighed by the potential benefits. Greater individual freedom, increased accountability, and a more resilient financial system overall.
It's like any new frontier, right?
Yeah.
There are going to be dangers, but also incredible opportunities for those who are willing to, explore.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that, Bitcoin isn't just some theoretical idea.
It's a real technology. It's already being used by millions of people around the world.
Yeah, that's true.
It's a social experiment in progress, and we're all part of it, whether we realize it or not.
That's a pretty profound thought. So if Bitcoin really could reshape the financial landscape, what opportunities or challenges might that create for, individuals like you listening right now? What could this mean for your life?
That's the question we all need to be asking ourselves, right?
Yeah.
It's an invitation to think critically about the role of money in our lives, to explore new possibilities, and to be active participants in shaping the future of finance.
What a journey this has been. We've gone from the history of money to the technical details of Bitcoin to the potential for a global financial revolution.
A lot to think about.
Huge thanks to our listener for sending in the Bitcoin standard and prompting this incredible conversation.
It's been a pleasure exploring these ideas with you.
And to you, our amazing listeners, thank you for joining us on this mind-expanding adventure. If this deep dive has piqued your interest, we encourage you to check out the Bitcoin standard for yourself and, continue exploring this fascinating world. Until next time, keep asking questions and keep diving deep.